In the middle of the southern swamps of the United States, heavy rain poured down like a waterfall. The water rose to knee-deep, and thick mud clung to the boat's wheels. On the small steel boat, men bent over, their hands clutching the cable that creaked as they pulled the heavy trap cage from the murky water. Green lobster, an invasive freshwater lobster, is turning rivers and lakes into gold mines and turning fishing into a game of life and death. $200 million a year, an industry built on the backs of people risking their lives. Everyone knows it, but no one stops it. Everyone knows they are an invasive species, but no one stops them. Because when the smell of money mixes with the smell of mud, all of nature's warnings become just a quiet echo in the humid wind of the American South. The Discover Green Lobster Invasion, the $200 million sea monster taking over America's coast? No one knows exactly where they came from. Some say they drifted in the ballast water of cargo ships from Asia. Others believe they escaped from Hawaiian farms after a tropical storm. It is only known that in the mid-2000s, a strange lobster with a bright turquoise shell was first seen caught in fishermen's nets off the coast of California. At that time, no one paid attention, but just 10 years later, green lobster have appeared everywhere, from Florida to Maine, from the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico to the cold seas of the North Atlantic. They reproduce faster than any crustacean ever recorded. A female carries up to 500,000 eggs at a time and can lay eggs 3 times a year. Eggs are laid everywhere. Anything that floats, they turn into a breeding ground. Not only do they reproduce rapidly, they are also virtually immortal. Green lobster can withstand temperatures from 8 to 28 degrees Celsius, living in both salt and brackish water, where most other creatures cannot survive. They eat everything in their path, small fish, fish eggs, larvae, even corals and their own kind. There are no natural enemies, no limits, only hunger and the instinct to dominate, making them spread like a plague at sea. The appearance of green lobster not only disrupt the food chain, but also disrupt the economic balance of the seafood industry. Wherever they go, American lobster, the pride of America, reduced production to 35% in just 5 years. Now, a creature that should not have existed in these waters has become the center of a new economy. An alien, born of human era, now feeding thousands of people in the very seas it was destroying. Amid the calm waters of the American South, Green Lobster has become the new ruler, a creature born to dominate. And as is the old law of nature, when one species rises, another must learn to survive beneath it. On the banks of the Louisiana River, men who once made their living fishing for native fish now look down at the murky water, not recognizing the land they have lived on all their lives. The east wind howled off the coast of Maine, so cold that even their breath turned to ice. Faced with this cruel reality, they had only one choice for survival: hunt the very man who robbed him of his livelihood. And when the sea no longer gave them a choice, they had only one way to survive, which was to hunt the very man who robbed him of his livelihood. On deck, iron cages were stacked high like walls, each weighing more than 100 kilograms, covered with steel wire and baited with rotten fish inside. The smell of fish, oil, and the cold smell of metal mixed together, that was the smell of life in this sea. As the engine roared, the small boat broke away from the lagoon and headed straight for the murky waters of the American South. Rain lashed the deck, muddy water splashed onto the deck, and the heavy roar of the engine filled the humid air. Every heave of the current made the deck of the boat vibrate, and under the dim yellow light, a thick mist of steam hung over the lagoon. There was no sound of waves here, only the hum of engines, the squeal of cables, and the labored breathing of men beginning their longest day. Hours later, when the waves had calmed, they began to pull. Each iron cage rose from the water, dripping cold. Inside, dozens of green lobster thrashing wildly, the green shell shining silver under the ship's lights, the more it banged wildly against the steel. Fishermen shouted to each other to empty the cages, count, classify, and then throw them into the cold box. Each big fish can be sold for up to $40. Each full barrel is worth several thousand. On a good night, the ship can bring back over $100,000. If the wave doesn't swallow half the batch. When the sun rose, white foam covered the hull of the ship, and the tank was almost overflowing. On the sea, there were only oil slicks, light, and hoarse laughter in the wind. Today, they won, but everyone knows, if the sea changes its mind, tomorrow no one may return. In these waters, Green Lobster, it's more than just a source of survival. It's a challenge, it's an addiction. It's a life or death game that Maine men can never quit. Are we controlling the invaders, or are we nurturing the very thing that will destroy the oceans? Are we saving the oceans by killing the invaders, or are we feeding a new disaster because of our own greed? People talk about sustainable food, but fishermen in Maine just see a few more numbers on their fuel bills. Officials declare, getting green lobster is the way to save the ocean. But biologists shake their heads. When we create commercial value for invasive species, we are not destroying them. We are making them stronger. In fact, every year millions of green lobsters captured, but the number at sea is still increasing. Faster, spread more widely, and are now out of control. Sanctuaries have recorded mass coral deaths, disappearance of small fish, and bare reefs. More and more people make a living from green lobster. The more difficult it is to stop mining. The thirst for money has turned the extermination into a $200 million industry, where invaders become resources. The first green crabs appeared along the coast of Maine, creeping into coves where lobsters once thrived. They devoured fish eggs, crushed seagrass roots, and destroyed the sandy bottom on which the ecosystem depended. If green lobster is the war of men out at sea, then green crab is the war happening right under our feet, silent, widespread, and nearly unstoppable. The sea seemed calm after the storm, but in fact, another invasion just began. But as the waters calmed, another creature began to rise from below. Not big, not strong, but too numerous to count. That is, green crab, a small crab with an olive-colored shell, razor-sharp claws, and a reproductive capacity no one ever imagined. They don't come in storms. They come in silence. They creep silently into swamps, through farming nets, hidden in the ballast water of cargo ships, and by the time they're discovered, it's too late. Scientists call it the green plague. Fishermen call it something else, the silent killer. It's quiet, it's not violent, but its effects are deeper than any hurricane. Bays are wiped out, farms are collapsing, and coastal economies are suffering more. $22.6 million per year. If green lobster is the battle of men in the midst of fierce waves, then green crab it is an invisible war, taking place right under our feet. No gunshots, no warning signs, just one cold truth. The sea is never really calm. Under the ocean floor, green crab, they act like a perfect biological machine, tiny but almost unstoppable. They reproduce so quickly that any attempt at control becomes futile. A single female can lay more than 180,000 eggs per season, and just a few weeks later the larvae have drifted across the bay, following the tidal currents to infiltrate every corner of the shoreline. Their adaptability far exceeds that of any native crab species. Green crab can live in salt water, brackish water, even cold water, only 45 degrees Fahrenheit, 7 degrees Celsius. They can withstand lack of oxygen and can bury themselves deep in mud, sand, or seagrass roots for days. With no natural predators, they eat everything, from fish larvae, shrimp eggs, clams, snails, even their own kind. Even more frightening, every time the environment changes, they adapt in just a few generations. Maine's blue crabs are larger, stronger, and more cold-tolerant than their European counterparts. California's crabs are fast-growing, aggressive, and have devastated Washington State's oyster farms. In each body of water, they've adapted to survive, and then thrived even more. Scientists call them The ultimate survivor. The ultimate survivor. Not by strength, but by numbers, speed, and patience. They spread like an epidemic. Just a few drifting in the ballast water of cargo ships can multiply into millions in a season. From Massachusetts to California, green crab have appeared everywhere, crawling in marshes, shallow bays, docks, even in seafood farms. Each crab is only about 6 inches long, but millions of them moving together can wipe out entire ecosystems. They are no longer crabs. They are a silent army, taking over every inch of America's coastline. In the face of the growing threat of green crab, coastal states were forced to act. In Maine, Massachusetts, and Washington, authorities allowed unlimited fishing. Anyone could set traps, as long as they caught as many as possible. However, all these are only temporary efforts. Green crab are still reproducing faster than humans can control them. Scientists warn that if their numbers cannot be reduced by at least 70% within the next few years, the New England coastal ecosystem may not have a chance to recover. The seas are fighting back with the very creatures humans have inadvertently introduced. And this time, the only solution that might work, not just in new technology or new foods, but in humans learning to take responsibility for the oceans they have harmed. Green lobster and green crab, one invasive, one destructive, both born of greed and carelessness. From ballast tanks to offshore iron traps, they are brought in, bred, and then multiplied into biological armies that dominate the oceans. Now the sea no longer distinguishes between natural and man-made. Only food chains are disrupted and industries built on sand collapse. Green lobster bring in $200 million a year. Green crab cause $22 million in damage. Two seemingly opposite numbers, but actually only differ by one letter: profit. And when profit becomes the sole goal, the line between exploitation and destruction no longer exists. Are we masters of the ocean, or are we just our own grave diggers? Please subscribe to the channel, The Discover. Don't miss our next journeys, where we track the creatures that are changing economies, human lives, and the future of our oceans. One click can open up a world that is sinking beneath the waves. Subscribe now and discover the true secrets of the ocean.